Hello everybody, welcome to Dakman Productions and welcome to Conahey Rail. And as you can see, I'm not wearing my Conahey Rail shirt today because we're going to work. So what we're doing today in this video, I said I was going to make a video on how I install the Gargraves switches. So this might help those who are a little concerned or not sure about how to install these. There's a few different methods. I'll cover how I do it and then give you a few of those other optional methods as well as while I'm doing this, and a couple tips. So Gargraves track, it has its advantages and disadvantages. Gargraves track, I picked out the nickel silver only because I don't know, it was more plentiful. There was a couple options, well, a few options when I first started. You know, I was looking at different tracks. I didn't know if I was going tubular, fast track, MTH real tracks, Gargraves, Atlas. There was a few options at me, and so for anybody who's a beginner or beginning in O gauge, that's what you face. One of the challenges is, what do you want to do? What made my mind up is, well, I looked at the MTH real tracks and then I've seen a lot of complaints on how the connectivity isn't always there. It loses it, it's kind of flimsy. So I stayed away from this stuff. Fast track, for me, it just wasn't realistic enough looking. So that was one of the disadvantages. However, the advantage of fast track is you can buy whatever sections you need to make up your layout. You know, it comes in different sizes and stuff. You don't have to cut anything, and you just buy the links you need and your switches and stuff and put it together, and everything flows electricity like, you know, how it's supposed to, as long as you connect it properly. So that's the advantage to fast track, is you can get up and you can lay down a lot of track in a lot less time. With Atlas O and Gargraves, well, that's a different story. It's a very realistic looking track. However, it comes in one length and you have to cut whatever you need. They do sell pre-bent curves, thankfully. Some guys like to use flex track and make their own curves, but Gargraves and Atlas both sell pre-bent curves. And again, I hope you guys stick with me because my throat is still froggy from you know, this stupid, I'm suffering from allergies, so you'll have to hang with me. So when I got into O gauge in 2015, Atlas O track was on back order until Neverberry. And everybody's like, what are you saying? It's a little saying we have, Neverberry. In other words, it's, we say never and part of February, so Neverberry, meaning it may not ever come. So yeah, it was like super backward back then, and everybody was complaining. But Gargraves was cheap and plentiful back then, so I bought into that and learned some tricks along the way and different methods on how to cut it and stuff like that. And again, I'm going to put a disclaimer out there before we get started with this. I do have a couple of homemade tools that I use to do this with. I don't recommend using homemade tools, and you'll see what I'm saying when we get to that point. But, you know, I'm a mechanic by trade. I work on diesel trucks, so I'm used to creating and making tools. Alright, so we're going to get started on this. Again, my throat's giving out, but yeah, let's go. So as we last left off, during my train's mail call, I was showing you guys where I wanted to put this switch at, which leads into my American Materials building that I got all the way back in Christmas time. But still, I got it wired up. I just don't have any trains going to it yet, sadly enough. So today's objective is to take this Gargraves switch and put it in here. So just like MOW track crew of a real railroad, you have to cut the switch in. So anybody who's ever watched a actual real switch being installed, which I did get to do in my town, a road crew comes out and they actually cut the track with chop saws and pull the section out to put the switch in. It's a big process, and those guys work hard getting those switches in. So for Gargraves, it's not going to be as difficult as that, luckily. But you're still doing basically the same thing. You got to cut and splice your switch in. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is that I'm doing this purposely. So the switch is going to go right here. Now, I almost got lucky because this is a piece of Gargraves that I have cut, and you can see where it ends here. But unfortunately, the switch passes that point. So I'm going to have to cut and splice right here. So I'll show you how I do that and what I use. I will say the proper tool to use is a small Dremel, but I'll show you what I made. Okay, so one of the tools we'll be using is a Milwaukee M12 fuel drill. I really like the Milwaukee product. To me, in my opinion, Milwaukee is like a top-of-the-line drill. A lot of their tools are top-of-the-line. I use them at work, working on diesel trucks. So this is a great drill. By all means, if Ryobi is in your, more or less, your budget, there's nothing wrong with them either for hand use. A disclaimer, Milwaukee is not a sponsor, nor are they paying me. We'll need pliers. These are gear wrench pliers. Gear wrench makes a lot of nice pliers, sockets, wrenches, real quality stuff. I do like the Gear Wrench product. Again, Gear Wrench is not a sponsor of my channel. Next is the going to be the controversial thing that I'm going to show you. So what I did is I created my own cutoff wheel. And this is one of the main reasons why I have not done a video like this, because I was afraid of people, posting, safety concerns. I shouldn't be using this and stuff like that. Now, I will say this is something that a newcomer or beginner should not do, but I created this for a reason. So, what I did is I took a 1/4-inch bolt by 3 inches long. I cut the head off, and I put a nut on each side of the cutoff wheel. And this cutoff wheel is a 2-inch cutoff wheel meant for a 1/4-inch cutoff tool, like an air tool. So this is like maybe a little overkill, but I'm not going to put this in a actual high-speed cutoff tool. So what I do for my comfort and purpose is I'm going to use this in my drill set on speed 2 this brings the RPMs down a lot lower than if it was in a cutoff wheel. It allows me to be able to handle it better. And I do realize that Dremels, which is really the correct tool I should be using, but I don't. Dremels, you can set the speed on them. Dremels would have a much smaller disc, cutoff disc than that. But that's what I use, and that's what I'm comfortable using. So I do wear safety glasses while I'm using that, even though it's set at a lower speed. Which, anytime you use a cutoff wheel, Dremel, or anything, any power tool, you should be wearing safety glasses. And the next thing is, I got this, I made this from a screwdriver. I just simply cut the end off so I could put that in my drill. Alright, so the first thing I got to do is remove the screws out of the Gargraves track. I have seen a couple YouTube videos where they don't recommend using screws, they recommend using nails instead because it splits the ties. I can tell you all my track is all screwed down. I was always afraid of the nails pulling back out or working their way out, where a screw will not. I found as long as you take a drill and pre-drill the hole and then make sure that you don't put the screw too tight, you will not split the tie. And that's what I do. I don't use nails because I'm afraid of them pulling out. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. And I found this is the perfect size screwdriver that I cut off for removing those Gargraves screws, because I do use genuine Gargraves screws. It looks like. Again, the head was full of dirt, so I'll end up throwing that away. Alright, so that was simple enough, right? Well, now comes the hard part. I just can't put this in here because it's too long. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure this thing out. So we got to get this switch back in. My arm's in the way, sorry about that. Alright, so I temporarily put the switch in over there, hooked it into the joiners so I can see where I need to cut this thing. So what I generally do is I'll overlap the switch. So I can see exactly where it needs to be cut at. Now, I know a lot of you guys have probably already noticed that my ballast here was not glued down. It was sort of like floating because I knew I was going to add siding here eventually, so that was the one place where it was not glued down. So I know people are going like, hey, your ballast isn't glued down. Yeah, I know that. But at any rate, so the next thing is I put this switch over, and then we're going to see where we stand at here. So you can see about where it's got to get cut. This is the important part. So how do I mark this so I know where to cut it? You're about to see that process right now. So what I found is to use duct tape. And I'll line up the duct tape across where it's got to get cut. And you can see, again, trying to work around the camera here. So I line that edge of the duct tape up with the switch there. And what I'll do is I'll finish it up. Alright, so there's two reasons why I'm using duct tape. Reason number one is so I can follow this line with my cutoff tool. And reason number two is the duct tape, believe it or not, is going to hold the rails in place. Because when you're cutting on this, if you're too hard on it, it has a tendency to want to twist and bend, and then you ruin your track. Next, we got to get it off the layout and support it. That's why I take out so many screws, so I can actually raise the track away from the layout. Alright. So now we're ready to cut. Once again, I recommend a little Dremel cutoff tool for doing this, but I made this Hermie tool instead. I know there will still be people posting you should be using a regular Dremel tool. They're not that expensive. You can control the speed on them just like with a drill, blah blah blah, but I like this setup because I can cut a lot faster. And as you can see, that's about as fast as it's going to go. So, we'll get to work here. Move this up a little bit more. Just like that, and we're done. And we just got to take the tape off. And like I said, the tape saved this from being, ends from being bent all up. So there's your tip. So the next problem. The way I just did it, it closes off the holes a little bit on the end of the track. So it makes it a pain to get the pins back in it again. So you got to kind of like tap them back in. They're not just going to maybe we'll do something like this with the camera. So they're just not going to go in. You got to tap them back in. I'll just take the. Now, how you know to stop? There's like a little tab right here on that joint or that pin here. So there's where you stop at right there. See the little ears, and that's how you know when to stop. When the ears are up against the rail, that's it, done. And I'm making this look easy because I've already built what I had built on Kane rail. Oops. So you can see you gotta be careful. There you go. Because you can bend the pin up. There's that one. The only way you can get any more harder than Gargraves track is if you went into O scale 2 rail and then started cutting your own ties and your own rail and hand laid the track. Those guys are craftsmen, man. I've seen those guys in O scale make their own switches with frogs and stuff. I don't know if I could handle that. It was hard enough for me using Gargraves. Alright, so we got that part of it. Now that should fit in here with no problem. That one seems to be sticking out just a little bit. There we go. And I know what you're thinking. Alright, we're home free. Wrong. Next, as I mentioned already, Gargraves does not flow electricity. Yay! So this is next up is the electrical part of it. Alright, so this is where quite a few different ways you can do this comes in. However, I'm going to show you what Gargraves gives you, and as you can see, you have red and how they want you to tie it in, and then you have blue for your negative or common. Alright, so to explain that diagram, your power is your center rail. And as you can see, the center rail comes in and it stops here. So it will not flow power to this part of it. Same way here. Comes in and stops here. It will not flow power to this part of it. And then this is your positive as well. So it's not going to flow positive power. It's not going to flow common either, depending on how this is wired up on your layout. So they recommend taking a jumper wire from outside rail to outside rail, and then that jumps that switch out. And then of course you're going to have to put a feeder here. You're going to have to put a feeder here and a feeder here. There's a couple different ways of doing this. Let me pull this switch back out. Like I said, that was a temporary thing. You cannot wire directly to the bottom of the switch. There's nothing there. I've seen some guys they'll wire up to these two pins here. I tried that. I didn't like the way it looked because you have wires exposed that you can see. I just didn't care for it, so I abandoned doing that myself. You could take wires for your common on the outside and solder them to the rail and connect them together and put one feeder in there. You would do the same for your power center rail, solder a wire to the center rail. That's another way of doing it. Some people are not comfortable soldering. So what another person has said they do, which I haven't tried, is they'll take their track and they'll take a terminal eyelet and put the wire to that and stick the wire inside of the Gargraves track like that, which does fit in there.
I wonder if, yeah. A little on the loose side, but yeah, once you put it in there, you could probably squeeze it on there. That's not a bad idea. And it is sort of like hidden, but as you can see, it just fell out. So you would have to squeeze the rail if that's what you're going to do. So I do like that idea. Also, some people will spread the rail a little bit there, where I just put the that terminal piece in. Some people will just open this up right here, that area where the terminal is at, and then put the wire in there and solder it or squeeze it together. So Gargraves sells pins with wires already soldered to them, as you can see here. So that's what I have used before. A guy suggested using terminal ends into the track itself. I can tell you these are very fragile. I don't recommend these people who are not careful to use these, because what happens is if you're even the slightest bit rough, the solder breaks off of the pin, which that's what my experience with these are. So probably the best option, I would say, for beginners is to go ahead and do what that guy suggested. Taking an eyelet, put your wire in there, put it in the rail like so. You could put, well, you could still put solder in this so it doesn't come out. Fill that hole up with solder, and then simply bend it over after it's soldered in there, and you're done. So that's probably a better option for those who are just starting out with Gargraves. And quite honestly, if I run out of those terminal ends, I do like this idea. That's what I'm going to do from here on out, because those terminal ends are expensive and are fragile. If you need to push it in some more, don't grab a hold of that wire, because it's going to break. Let's give it a slight tap. So we need one there. We need one here. And we need one here. Alright, so now we have our feeders in for the power, as you can see. Now we have to put our positive in, or I mean common wire up. So we're going to need one here. And as you can see, it's giving me a hard time, so I don't want to push on that wire. You don't want to push on that wire. There we go. I guess it just didn't have it straight. So we're going to the outside rails. Unfortunately, Gargraves has all the same color wire, so you might want to take a tip take a paint marker and mark out or color your positive wire so you know it's positive. So when you put it down in your hole to the bottom of your layout, you know exactly what's positive and what's negative. And I'm laughing because I did that exact same thing. I put it all in. I'm like, which one's which now? So, and then there's the other end of it. So what's going to happen is you're going to take the two commons under your layout and you're going to connect them together. And then this feeder goes to positive. These two feeders go to positive. Again, I didn't show it properly. Positive. And then this wire and this wire gets simply tied together and goes to your negative or your common feeder. And that's it. So I can't take you under the layout with me, unfortunately. So I'm going to go ahead and get the holes drilled out, get the wires all wired up. Alright, so I got the switch in. I don't have it wired up yet. I'm dreading crawling underneath of this layout. When you get to be my age, the last thing you want to do is crawl on your back on a cold concrete floor. So, tip of the day is take a piece of cardboard with you. And even a bigger tip to those who are starting out building a new O-gauge layout. If you build O-gauge layout modular style, my suggestion is make sure you make it tall enough and the legs spread wide enough, the support legs spread wide enough to where you can go to Home Depot and buy yourself a $20 creeper and use that to crawl around underneath the layout with. You'll thank me for it later. But at any rate, yeah. So, and the reason why my layout is so low is because it actually, if it was taller, it would actually hurt my back to constantly lean over doing things in that position. If you look real close, you can see I had the feeder through the layout going down. So, like I said, I have a feeder, get my camera ready. I have a feeder here. We'll start over again. I have a positive feeder here, positive feeder here, and a positive feeder here. For my common, I have a common feeder here and a common feeder there. So that should take care of all 3 points to power up my switch. And then what's going to happen is the way I wired it for the layout is that it's going to run common here. As you can see, the common does flow. So the common part of the switch does flow. The only thing that will not flow is positive electricity or 18 volts. But it does flow, which is why you only jump out the common on one side of it. It does flow common. Alright, so now the next thing. Now that we got that in, I'm leaving the electrical part for last. Not looking forward to that. Alright, so we're going to get some track in. Alright, so there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can use Gargraves pre-bent curves to do this, and rigid straight track, which I don't recommend doing. I recommend using Gargraves, if you like Gargraves track, the flex track. So the Gargraves flex track, as I mentioned, it comes in one 37 inch length, which is kind of cool in a way. So what I'm going to have to do is, and people often say, how do you bend the track? There's a ton of different methods out there. People say they used a 55-gallon drum. Some people say they used a hot water heater, which, okay, whatever works for you. Trash can, anything that's really round. For me, the easiest way for me to do it, a hobby shop guy taught me this. And he says, well, you're a big guy. Just use your stomach. I'm like, okay, that sounds easy enough. So that's what I do. So what we got to do is we got to take out the and it's not going to take much to bend this. So we got to figure out. I'm trying to include you guys in this. We got to figure out where we want the bend. So we want to start bend, and you want a nice gradual bend. So yeah, I literally take it and just a little bit at a time. This is where you want to take your time at. So yeah, I'm actually literally using my stomach as the guy showed me. I just wanted you guys to see that I really am doing that. And you can see, just by the little bit I went, so part of this also is being able to see where did I bend it at wrong, and so forth and so on. So you can see a lot of this is like eyeballing. Alright, so we're a little tight here. So what we need to do is take some bend out right here and then put it in here instead. Alright, let's try that. Alright, so let's take a look at what we got all mocked up. Nothing's permanent. Oops. I always end up doing that. But anyway, you can see where I got it coming straight in. Then I have it bending here. And then going through the facility here. And I know what people are saying. You should have made the bend a little bit sooner so it's not going into a curve going through a facility. These cars I'm using are not going to rub. They're not that big or sharp. I'm going to be using cylinder hoppers. But hey, let's try one out. Alright, so what we'll be using for our test car is an Atlas O Master Series, because this is going to be one of the cars going in there. Grace and Company from Clifton, New Jersey. And as you can see, it's Polymer Chemicals Division, Plastics and Resins, because I want this to be a plastic material plant. And why not something from New Jersey, since I live in New Jersey? Everybody asks me, where do you live at? Or where are you from? New Jersey, or actually South Jersey. But, so let's get this on the track here. I sort of want to make sure that this thing isn't going to hit the sides the way I made it. So we're going to sort of like cam push it in there and make sure that everything goes well. So yeah, even on the curve, you can see there's plenty of room to for that car to go in and out. And I know what you guys are saying next. Oh, how about the locomotives? Most locomotives will not go through a building like this. So what happens is, a lot of people don't notice, especially with a rotary coal dump, a locomotive will not go through the rotary coal dump. When it gets to near the locomotive will actually have what they call an idler car. And the idler car is what gets the last, or the car nearest to the locomotive, into the building or rotary coal dump. So, a little bit of information for you. And the difference with Gargraves, as you see, it uses pins instead of joiners. Like Atlas O has joiners on it. And Atlas O track is a solid track. But Again, I didn't glue any ballast down here because I knew this was going to happen. I knew I was going to add a siding. Alright, so I did this purposely so you guys can see what's going on here. Alright, so notice what's going on here. You have one end that's tight, one end that's showing a pin, and one end that's even showing more of a pin, and you'll notice that it's staggered. So the reason for that is when you bend Gargraves track, one end is going to become longer than the other. So guess what you're doing? Yeah, you gotta cut it back to being straight again. Because once you bend it, that's naturally going to happen. So we're going to go ahead and grab some tape. And like I said, I did this purposely. Put it together knowing that it wasn't going to match up. So you guys can actually see. Alright, so you're going to take, and I'll show you close up, the one that has the most gap in it, and you're going to draw an imaginary straight line. I use the railroad tie as a straight line. Now you can take a closer look. So I took the one with the biggest gap and I put it here. So this won't have to be cut. So you can see how much has to be cut here and how much has to be cut here to get it straight again. And that may mess up a little bit of your curve, but not much. You can do your final adjustment after you install it. It won't throw it off that much. Alright, so if you have your gaps and stuff correct and all that stuff, you can start fastening your track down after you do the wiring, of course, because even though you dread doing the wiring part, you don't want to tie the track down if there's an issue, and then you gotta just unscrew everything. So I'll wire everything up, and then I'll show you how I check for to make sure everything is flowing the way it should. Alright, so I finally bit the bullet when I reached the layout and wired the switch in. People are going to ask what size wire did I use, and I use 16 gauge for my feeders. I'm sure there'll be people that tell you that's a little overkill, 18 is good enough, but not for me, because when I'm running long trains, or if I decide to run 4 or 5 locomotives that are powered with the smoke on, I don't want my wiring getting overheated. Also, I see debates all the time whether to use stranded wire or solid core wire. For anything that you're going to use for modern, meaning any Lionel TMCC, Lionel Legacy, MTH DCS, you should be using stranded wire. Also needed is a good pair of crimpers for stripping the wire and crimping your connectors. I actually won this at a truck show, believe it or not, in a contest at a truck show. I like stuff that's free. Alright, so the next thing is we need to make sure that this is going to work. So let's turn the power on. Now, what I recommend for testing is buying yourself a little cheap meter at Home Depot or Lowe's or someplace like that. Menards, since everybody likes going there. But it doesn't have to be anything fancy. I mean, I got this thing for like 10 bucks, and it does work. And basically, I just want to make sure that I have, I don't know if you guys are seeing this or not. Let me get closer. I just want to make sure I got flow. So I'm going to take and go from my ground. You can't see it. I'm going to go from my ground to center, and I should have power. I do. I'm going to check it here. See that? So I got power flow. See that? Check it here. Yep. The switch. Yes. I got both sides there. Now I want to check the other side of the switch because, like I said, it does not flow electricity. So I want to double check there. Yep. See, I got it there. Yeah. And I know some people say, well, I'm not good at electricity. It's fine. Everybody's got their strong points. See how it's lighting up? So I'm verifying. Now, of course, I'm doing this with no load. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is, let's say you put a connection together that's not tight and it's loose. You'll have power with this because this does not draw a load. However, when a locomotive gets onto that track, and if there's a loose ground or common, or even a loose power wire that's not connected properly, you'll have what's called a load dropout. So either you will lose your power and or ground because you didn't make your connections tight. However, when you take the locomotive off, it's still going to show power with this because this doesn't have a load. The locomotive does. And the reason why I bring that up is people say, yeah, I tested it with my meter. I got power there, but when the locomotive runs across it, it quits and it doesn't run anymore. But yet, when I check the power, it's fine. So that's why. Just check for loose connections. Alright, so we're back after we cleaned up a little bit. We're going to drill up the track and put some screws in. I like using screws because I know the nails won't pull out, as I mentioned. I'll show you how I do it. I use Gargraves screws. I bought these from Trains with a Z, by the way. They were really cheap. It's like, I don't know, there's like probably like 400 in there, and it's like, I don't think I paid more than $10 for all that. That'll last me forever. But here's what they look like. I like the 1-inch ones. Oops, we'll grab that later. I like the 1-inch ones because they really have a bite to them. And as I'm showing you guys how I do this, I'm sure people are going to have questions about what type of transformers that I use. I use the Lionel 180 watt bricks, the powerhouse bricks. I don't use old school transformers for anything newer, and I actually don't recommend it. And I'll tell you why here in a minute. I'm sure people will disagree with me. But, so yeah, anything Lionel TMCC, Lionel Legacy, or MTH DCS, you should be using newer electronic transformers. Only because the old school transformers like the Lionel TW or the post-war ZW, they're not clean power. Their power puts out spikes, which can be harmful to modern locomotives. So what I do here is I pre-drill just like that. And I'll show you guys that close up. I'm going to finish my transformer story here. So, yeah, I don't recommend old school transformers because the old school transformers put out dirty spikes. And it doesn't affect the new stuff right away. It's over time is when the damage happens. So, let me put it to you another way. So you won the lottery and you go to the Ferrari dealer. Notice how I'm starting to slow down now. And you decided that you were going to buy a Ferrari because you won the lottery, and the salesman says, hey, you better run this on premium. However, you spent all your lottery money on the Ferrari, so when you get to the gas station, you don't have a lot of money again. And then you start putting regular gas in it instead of the high premium gas. Well, it's not going to hurt the Ferrari right away, but what happens is the cheap gas that you're putting in there causes pre-detonation, and it starts putting small little holes on top of the pistons. Now, over time, as this is happening, eventually it will put a hole all the way through the piston. Now, this may take a year, 2 years, 3 years, but eventually it will happen. And then you lost compression on that one cylinder. Now the Ferrari's no good. Now you gotta have the engine replaced in a car you couldn't afford in the first place because you bought it with winning the lottery. But at any rate, same thing with the old school transformers. They're going to pit your electronic motors. They could cause damage to your boards over time, not right away. But eventually it will happen. It may take a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And I'm sure there's people going to say, well, I use a TVS, so that doesn't happen. Well, here's the problem. Well, first of all, for those who don't know what a TVS is, that's a transistor voltage suppressor. And its job is to keep out large spikes from your electronic devices. The problem with a TVS, it's a one-time use. And on top of that, you don't know if it's blown or not when it does blow. So my tip of the day is, if you're considering getting into Lionel TMCC, Legacy, or MTH-DCS controls, buy the proper transformer for it. If it's not in your budget, don't bother buying it. And that's the main reason why I don't buy used locomotives unless I know who had it and exactly what they were using. If it's somebody that I knew, then and I knew that they were not using old school transformers on it, then I'll buy it. Other than that, I am not buying any used locomotive because I don't know how the last person used it. And that's why people don't mind buying off of me, because they know how I run my stuff and how peculiar and particular I really am. So as you can see, this is going together pretty well. Alright, so after all that, we can reballast this and make it permanent with glue. A 50-50 mixture of Elmer's clear glue will do good enough. Very well. And so it looks good. I'm going to need an end bumper piece for the end, so it's not quite finished yet. So that part of it I probably won't glue. Alright, so here we are. That's just installing a switch. Yeah, so you can see how much work it takes. It's just not as simple as pulling one out, pulling the track apart and putting it back together with Gargraves. So it's a little bit of work, but you know, I think it's enjoyable, actually, being hands-on like that with your railroad. Some people just want to get something up and running, so Fast Track works for them. That's cool and stuff. I've seen some cool layouts made with Fast Track. I just like the looks of the Gargraves, and I decided to use that. So, alright, so what I'm going to do is I'll make another video to this one, which will show a train coming into the yard. We'll pick up the cars and we'll take the cars and then drop them off to the this plant. So that's how I splice in a Gargraves switch. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. You learned a little bit of something. And yeah, check this out. So that's cool. It's always nice to have an industry to switch into. Something different when you get tired of running trains in circles. Alright, so I'll catch you guys next video round. And catch you guys later. Goodbye.